I'll start a minute earlier to bring you up to date. Some of you are visiting with us, and you're throwing you right into in the middle of the Book of Solomon. Sometimes people don't study that much. You may have studied that, but it's kind of tough to be put into the middle of a book and try to get something out of the class. We begin lesson 4 today. One of the things that we're looking at with Song of Solomon, it's through the years, through the religious world, it's been a type of love that God has for His church. Do we know in the New Testament that Jesus is the bridegroom and church is the bride? We know that. So some have said, well, this Song of Solomon was pointing toward that. It was a type of the antitype, which is really God's love for the church. It's showing that. And many have interpreted it that way. Let's say if we end up doing that, don't we have to really know what the type is stating so that we could take the imagery from there and try to apply it somehow with the New Testament church? We'd have to understand what it meant. So what are we doing? We're doing a verse-by-verse study. So we're not going over the type yet. People have done that. I don't think when we start looking at the text, we'll say, I think there was something immediately that we need to understand. Who is this a song of songs? That's what the real title is. It's a song of songs. Who does that belong to? Solomon. We know that from the text. And we know it's titled the Song of Solomon. That's how we know it. But the very first verse, which a lot of Hebrew, in the Hebrew Bible, the first verse, the first line would be really the title of the book. What's it called? The Song of Songs. It's showing the superlative. He wrote many songs, but this is the best of them all. And God preserved that. And we say, well, what is it about Solomon and a woman that is in love with Solomon? Like Jesus is the bridegroom and we ought to be loving Jesus? Well, look at the very first verse of the opening book. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. She's saying that in regard to Solomon because she's part of the daughters of Jerusalem. Therefore do the virgins love thee. Draw me and we will run. We, not me, we. She's a part of that group. And that introduces us to a section of people, a group of people that she's going to be talking back to all the time. They're kind of off stage here. And just like we're in a Shakespeare play, that we can do a lot of imagery, teaching, and so forth, and just casting off of them, and they answer back, and they ask a question that leads us to the next scene. They're there, the daughters of Jerusalem. She's part of that, but more than that, she's going to be Solomon's wife. He's ravished by her love. And so we see those particular characters. I believe there's another character in this song. Others do not. And so we'll be looking at the thing, well, this is Solomon's love for her love for Solomon. But what happens is that throughout this song, she's apart from him. And that brings forth a drop. Why is there a departure? We don't know. Some take this, well, this is teaching about your marriage. It's going to start off real nice, but it's going to have difficulties, and you're going to be separated for a while, and you need to get back together again. And that's what we need to do in a marriage. Well, you may gain that, you may take that from there, but we're never told why Solomon is leaving her other than he's a busy man. It may be just implied. He got things to do. He's got a lot of wives, a lot of concubines, and a lot of maidens waiting in line. They love Solomon. He's king. And so introducing that conflict, I said, what could be the point? And all through this song, there's a picture of a shepherd man. A boy, can you see, well, this boy, this lover out here that she really loves is a shepherd, and Jesus is a shepherd. And, there's the type. We're going that way. You may want to go that way. But the point is, there is a character here. Is that Solomon? He keeps sheep, and he lives out in the wilderness, and you begin to see there's somebody like that, and she loves him. And because the Song of Solomon will talk about his 60 queens and wives, and he would have a lot more than that before he's over with in his reign. This is early on. And I believe it's an indictment against Solomon and his polygamy, and this is not what God wants. We know where it led him, and this is one by inspiration that he writes that is really setting forth the fact that you do not stir up love until it pleases. 3 times in this song, they keep coming back to that refrain. She makes it an oath for the daughters of Jerusalem. I want you to swear that you will say this, that you will understand this. This is serious. We're making sure you understand it's an oath. You don't stir up love before it's time. Solomon is stirring up love before it's time. That's my opinion. And she has a love for somebody else. But under a system of polygamy, under a system where he rules, she's going to be apart. And she dreams of him. And it's not the dream of, I'm married to somebody else, I'm married to somebody, and I'm dreaming about some other man. There's nothing impure about this throughout the song. It is an indictment that hear what God really wants, and he will show that in the gospel of Christ, in the rule of Christ, that each man has his own wife. Each wife has her own husband. They render unto each other their due. There is this love, this marital love that is pure, lovely. There's nothing pornographic, and we've already dealt with some details about that attraction that you have, and to give oneself over in that sexual relationship is pure and lovely, and ought to be for one, Solomon. And as glorious as you are, as persistent as you are, you can't take my heart, because that belongs to somebody else. Maybe there should be a system where even in times where children were paired off when they're 2 or 3 years old in ancient times, that they will learn to love one another, as because that love belongs to them. They can learn to do that. But Solomon isn't loving just one woman, not one woman sexually, but he's ravished by her and she stands out. But he hasn't won her heart in this song. And that to me gives all of the song meaning. It is in a context of what God really wanted. He allowed polygamy. That's not his will. And when he perfected things in Christ, he made it sure that we understand that is wrong. And this is just exaltation of marital love, which we all need to be reminded of, how wonderful that is. We belong one with one. We have an opportunity to fall in love like she's doing. We have that opportunity to marry that person. And the conflict throughout this is that as long as she's thinking about him, but at the same time, Solomon says how lovely you are, and there's attraction there because, it opens it up that way. All the daughters of Jerusalem looked at that, but here's one. And Solomon, you can't win her, you haven't won her heart, at least at this time. And she's not married to the other one. She would like to. That's where her heart is. And we see those two contrasted that say, I think polygamy is kind of bad. God is allowing it to occur, and it's happening, but it will come to an end under the more perfect covenant that we have with Christ. So that brings you up to date. So we're in the midst of something that is happening, and she's having a dream. Is that correct? What does the text say? In chapter 5, we've already finished up with verse 1, where there is the sexual attraction and the idea that it's being fulfilled and so forth. And so in verse 2 it says, I was asleep, but what was awake? I was asleep, but my heart's awake. Did you have one of those experiences last night? You were asleep. Did you dream? Some did, some don't. I don't know what that means. Was it a nightmare? What was it? But I think we all know, I was asleep, but my heart waked. I'm awake, even though I'm sleeping. And what is she thinking about? Well, she's thinking about Solomon. And I don't see a contradiction of how that wouldn't apply to Solomon in the song. But I think it's now one of these things that he is ravished with her in chapter 4, and yet she is wanting to be connected with she's heading south, but she wants her lover from Lebanon to come and enjoy the gardens of her love. And he replies that he's in accordance with that. And we say, well, that could be her and Solomon. And yeah, it could be. But in the midst, if it is, all of a sudden, she's awakened and she wants the one she loves. And apparently, if it's Solomon, he's gone. I don't know why. He didn't tell us. And we'll never know. But he's not there. And her love is so strong for Solomon that she's willing to take a beating for him. Because she's going to be beaten up in this dream. And that may be how strong she feels about him. I think it's how strong she feels about the shepherd boy, the shepherd lover. And there's only one knowledge. We may have different understandings, but there's only one knowledge. And you and I, with humility, and we're in this class together, we're striving to find out what is the right understanding that I need to have when I read the text and gain the knowledge. Because this is the only embodiment that we have is knowledge. There's one thing. There's one knowledge. We ought to be united on that. But what we're doing, we're trying to say, well, how does that fit? And that's a process of coming to understanding. So that's what I'm trying to achieve. And of course, I'm teaching it one way. Doesn't mean that my understanding is perfect. I mean, I wish that they would tell me when the scene changes who's speaking. I wish they'd tell me, now this is Solomon, and this is the lady. And then I wouldn't have to do that. But I've had to do that with Shakespeare plays, with books I've studied. Who's talking? Oh, you got to look at the context, and we figure it out. Well, I may be wrong in saying, well, this is where they speak, but what they say has meaning, and we're trying to see it, and you'll see does that harmonize with what the text says. So that's the process we're under. So does everybody agree that she's probably sleeping and she's dreaming? She's already been thinking about him when Solomon brings him, or thinking about this one, Solomon brings her into Jerusalem. She's at the feasting table, and she's thinking about the one she loves, and we say, well, that's Solomon, or I think it's this person. So that's where the difference is, and I think it doesn't mean both. And to inject someone that Solomon's the only one mentioned as writing this thing, to inject someone else. We can inject the daughters of Jerusalem. We can inject the Shulamite woman. But you better be careful about injecting this shepherd boy. And yes, you better. Just like I better quit saying, well, this is just a type. What this whole book's about is just describing the church one day, and we're going to apply it that way. And then we forget all the details that we're looking at. So we're not going to go there. I think when you get through reading the text, you realize, no, that's not what he was talking about. But what we see is that we start looking at the things, and all of a sudden we ask, what does she hear? What noise does a Shulamite woman hear? Describe it for me, because the text makes you do that. And it's expressed that. What does she hear? I heard a lot of things this morning. I heard people singing in Spanish at 6 o'clock in the morning. I think they've been singing all night. They were off key, men and women, just howling up the storm. And I don't know Spanish, but it sounded like a serious song. And that's what I heard. I heard voices, distinctive voices. I heard a song, I heard a tune. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm wondering, what in the world does this mean? So what does she hear? She hears a knock and a voice, doesn't she? If I just said she heard a voice, well, that's your dream. But it's not her dream. It's not the reality that we see here. It is the voice of my beloved that knocketh. I can hear that. And she hears the voice. And what is the voice saying? What is this person? You're going to go Solomon, or I've injected another character. And so I'm saying, here is my beloved. I'm dreaming about him, and this is what happens in my dream. He knocks, and what does he say? Open to me. How does he describe her? My sister, my love. What does he say, my dove? We all know she has eyes that are deep and moist and reflective and soft and inviting as a dove. And if he's a man, and we say, well, that's how Solomon describes her. Well, that's the way she is. But I can see a man from the country, eyes like a dove, maybe by a full stream of water, which we'll see in a few moments. There is that dove. There's a softness, there's a tenderness, and he says, my undefiled, pure. And he honors her character. Her outward beauty is understood. He understands that, but it's my dove, my sister. I love as a close relationship. It's not sinful, but it's my love. And that's who is speaking. So where is he coming from, and what's his condition? For my head is filled with dew, and my locks with the drops of the night. Tell me, where's he coming from? Did he have an umbrella? Apparently not. And it's a dew that's settling in. Maybe it's late at night. After all, she's gone to bed. She's asleep. She's dreaming. It's nighttime. We got watchmen that are going to be looking over the city. And so there is one that would kind of fit with a man out here in the tending a bunch of sheep. That's how she remembers my love, my beloved, and he is remembering her. And so that's the noise she hears, and it's what it captivates her heart. In fact, it makes her lose her spirit, makes her lose her heart. I just heard his voice, and he's knocking at the door. How does she respond to her beloved's request? I thought he was special. Well, I think she is. But here's the time of night. She's infatuated that, but there's barriers there. Why doesn't he come in? He tries. Door is locked. And we remember we have a parable in the New Testament where persistence is being exalted by God, that we continue to persist in prayer. And it's like someone coming as a friend, and they have a friend coming to them, and they don't have enough bread, so they go to a friend. It's about midnight. And why does the fellow not open the door? Children are abed with me. Everything's, I got barriers there, but because he's so persistent, he'll finally open the door and give him what he wants. That parable is to teach us about prayer, persistence of prayer. But there's the story that we see here, that there's difficulty. And I think she regrets not getting there sooner, don't you? But I got a problem. I mean, my feet are washed, and our floors are not tiled. We don't even have we maybe have a dirt floor. Maybe there's problems getting. I've already done that, and here you're knocking. But as we see, she's she's understanding that though there's a barrier, and it says, my beloved put his hand by the hole, and interpreters of the door, which I think probably is important there. Do you have a gate at your house? I do. I can go in it from inside and out, and when I want people to stay out, I lock it. And of course, they had their latches, and they would have a hole there where you could go in and you reach up there. And apparently, he's done it, but there's some type of obstruction, because what happens? He leaves, doesn't he? He can't get in. My beloved put his hand by the opening or the hole of the door, and my heart was moved for him. Even though there's a barrier here, we see what she's responding. My heart was moved for him. I lost my spirit over him. And it moved me to overcome the obstacles. That's what we have. Well, she didn't care much about him. If we want to stop there, we could make that interpretation. That's not understanding. Understanding is, I don't care what it took. I then realized I've got to put on a garment, and my feet's going to get dirty. And I won't have to do that again. So what? I am moved because I heard his voice. That's how much she places upon her beloved. And I rose to open to my beloved, and my hands dropped with what? Myrrh. And my fingers with liquid myrrh. Well, why did she dip her hand in a bunch of perfume to open the door? That's crazy. Who said she did? Well, I believe it. That's what I believe about it. Let's move on. I don't see. That's one barrier she didn't have to have. But the imagery there is powerful. It fits with what she thinks about him. And you say, well, what is he? That is one reason for why people don't believe it's the shepherd boy. And I said, whoa. Why would he be coming out with a bunch of perfume on his hands? He's just a shepherd boy. Solomon could. So therefore it's Solomon. Let's keep it with the beloved before we go there. And I'm saying it could be this one as well. Because myrrh, why would we be connecting it with perfume? Jesus' dead body had myrrh connected with that. The idea of the perfume and the body, it's stinking by now. On the fourth day, he's raised on the third day. By now, it's on this third day, it'd be stinking. All of those things. So we know it's part of that. It's gum that comes from the tree out there in the wilderness where a shepherd boy could be. And there was a fragrance about that they could take care of a lot of odors that way. And I'm not saying here that his hands were full of that, but there was the fragrance concept of myrrh, liquid myrrh, which we pour in a liquid that of being perfume. And so I have that, but we have something in this text that makes it fit real well with her being infatuated with his voice. What is it? You don't get it till verse 13. When she's describing her beloved, his cheeks are as bed of spices, as banks of sweet herbs. His lips are as lilies, dropping with what? His lips are dropping with liquid myrrh. Now, he's not slobbering perfume. But why is her hands filled with even liquid myrrh? I just heard him speak. And I'm trying to open the door, and I can't get there fast enough. I got barriers. I'm overcoming them. I love his voice so much. Can you see why that could apply to the church? Oh, the bride is Jesus' voice. Yeah, I see where you can take it. But you're going to have to understand the meaning of words and how they're used in their context, and to allow yourself to let the writer develop the picture. Live in it. Don't determine I've interpreted what it is. And that's the battle we all have, because I first of all said, what in the world is she greasing up her hands for? Does she have to open that lock up? That's not real smart. And how does his lips drip with, oh, he spoke with his lips. His voice was such. And her hands, his fragrance is still there. I can still hear his voice. But what's the problem? What creates the drama? He's not there. He was there. He's not there. But I still love to hear his voice. My shepherd died and went to heaven, but I still hear his voice in the church. But we're in the midst of one who is beloved, and Solomon is writing about this. Does this have any application to the times in which we're living? I at least want to establish that, and it has a lot to do. Solomon, many wives, and yet here was one. Her heart is for another. And it keeps coming from a pastoral setting. And at the same time, the caveat with that is that Solomon had a lot of vineyards. He built a lot of vineyards. He was a man of nature as well. So I'm not discounting the fact, but it's interesting to me that they discount the shepherd boy to make it Solomon. Commentators do. I said, why? Why? Because I think it could be him. And it's the voice that he speaks. It's what's like fragrant perfume. And he was there, and he spoke while he couldn't unlock it. And my hands are like liquid myrrh. It's like it's falling still from his lips. And as I try to open that door, to me, the imagery is powerful. And when you get that, try to go deeper than that. I can't. And stay with the text. I can't go deeper than that. Why should I? That's enough to move her heart. And then as she responds with chagrin because he's gone. And he's not there, because in a dream you're never going to find him, because you're going to belong to Solomon. That's my interpretation. That's my taking for understanding what this song is driving us to, and he continues to do so in the midst of all of Solomon's caring for her. So I at least know where we're coming from. But I just want to say, a lot of people say we don't ever talk about a shepherd boy. We're talking about Solomon, and in order to do that, I said earlier in the first of those that they make Solomon saying, I've got to win her over, so I got to disguise myself as a shepherd. Now, to make that interpretation, so you've got some pretty good reason why there's a shepherd out there. You made Solomon go under disguise in order to win her. And so that's how that picture goes. I said, no, wait a minute, maybe that's a real one that she's, well, we already told her, we already been told that she would like to take her beloved to the inner portion of the house of her mother. That's where their home is. It's not Jerusalem where Solomon is. But maybe she wants to take Solomon there. But I could see taking one that you knew from the northern part of Israel that you really were in love with. And I think she's responding that way. So regrets, moved by his voice. The liquid myrrh to me is solved because his lips drip with liquid myrrh. This is his voice. And we can apply that to marital love. That's a good relationship. Don't you like to hear the voice of your husband when you're apart? When you remember the voice? And same thing for the wife. You know that voice, and that voice means so much, and that voice will like to get in. It's a person that likes to get in. And has he been going through some difficulty to get there? I've got dew on my hair from the night. I don't care. I want to see you. And she would like to see him. and the barrier's there, they're not that, well, I really don't want to see you. No, she wants to, and she's willing to do that. And by the time she gets there, and that's the way dreams work, by the time you get there, what she's wanting is gone, or something happens. So what else do you have that she responds to his love or his request? Because she doesn't get to see him and he doesn't get to see her. That's a fact, isn't it? But there's regrets. And there's a longing that she has. And so that's how she describes the sorrow connected with the opening of the door. She's moved by that, but she's not able to accomplish what she'd like. She'd like to see the person behind the voice. Any comments you'd like to add to that? Feel free to do so. And I may have missed the point, but I think the force of these things, they paint that consistent, coherent picture. What did the woman want the daughters of Jerusalem to do? Now, let me back up a little bit. We need to look at verse 6. I opened to my beloved had withdrawn himself and was gone. That's why some will say Solomon, they got a problem. He withdrew himself. He's mad. We don't know why, but I don't think it's just a picture. I'm not going to be able to have him. He's not going to be able to have me. But my soul had failed me when he spake. My heart was lifted up. It had gone from me. I was overwhelmed, and it's like liquid myrrh coming out onto my hands when I opened the door that he had touched, and his voice was still lingering. I sought him, but I could not find him. I called him, so there's a persistence, and that's another thing we can say about this response. I called him, but he gave me no answer. He answered before. He was making a request. I'm calling for you now, and there's no answer. So what happens in verse 7? Which to me is just something comes out, and he likes her, she likes him, and he's calling for her. Why this? Thy watchmen that go about the city found me. They smote me. They hit him. They hit her. They wounded me. It hurts. The keepers of the walls, who are those? What's the parallelism in poetry here that you see and you can learn from that? Who are the watchmen? Keepers of the walls. Who are the keepers of the walls? The watchmen. Just another way of saying the same thing. And they found her, and they smote her, and they took away my mantle from me. That was a very long, flowing, thin garment that ladies would wear over their shoulders. And they took that away from her. It was a dignified piece of material. It meant that they took that away from her. Why would they do that and hit her to the point it hurt her? And it's just where we are. It's where I'm studying, so I got to figure that out. I'm going to be teaching it today. Did you figure it out? Yes.
Are you taking this still in the context of the dream, which is dream?
Yeah.
I do figure it out.
So what would it other be? Outside the dream, what would it be?
I don't know.
Oh.
I'm taking it in the context of the
Okay. So we have no clue. All right, here's my step. If you got something, let me know. Just like I heard a voice at 6:30 in the morning, you'd like to shut it up. No. It's disturbing. What are they? They're protectors of the wall. And here's a woman in the middle of the night crying out for her beloved. And they may assume she's up to no good. We're going to stop her. Apparently she's already been pretty persistent. We're going to stop her. And you know what? What would give me a right to stop her and kind of beat her around a little bit? Because she just may be a prostitute. Lay out late at night like that calling for a lover. That's just me. That's trying to figure out what would be consistent, because you think about her, they found her. What do you mean they found her? Because she's wanting the message out. She's calling for him. And that could be very disturbing in the middle of the night. And you're there to keep watch. I mean, after all, how did the spies get into the city to spy out the town? Through a harlot. And maybe she is just a disguise. Maybe there's some problem. We better take care of that right now. And so you do that before us. Shut her up. But take away her veil may show disrespect that they had for her. And that she was stripped of her dignity. And one reason, motive might be, we got to protect it. And after all, she maybe a harlot, and we are justified to do what we're doing. They felt like they're justified. And it was causing disturbance, and that would probably protect the city. We got to take care of that uprising over here. And we'll do it in the way that, pretty quick, and I think they did. That's mentioned. That's injected. We've got to try to deal with that, and I can see that context of a woman out in the streets calling for her beloved, and he's not there. And it's hard to deal with her. She's out of her mind. Her heart's that way. I remember taking when I first moved here, there was another preacher friend of mine who was filming the charismatic healing service over in Beaumont. And there was a gentleman that was over at Highlands at the time and confined to a wheelchair, and he wanted to go. So I went with him. Guy's taking pictures, he's filming. I'm there to assist the man. Well, this man in a wheelchair got loose, and he went backstage where Oral Roberts' son, this is about his healing service. And when we got back to him, the cameras were running. They had their fist up here trying to shut him up because he was causing a disturbance. Because they had taken him out of his chair, taken him out of his wheelchair, and you never took that man out of his wheelchair. I saw it with my eyes. I said, well, they're pouting. And they would say, we're going to beat the devil out of you because he disturbed Oral Roberts' sons on stage because he's wanting to be healed. And Oral Roberts had a lot of, and that's when I got to see all the people lined up in hospital beds under tents so they couldn't breathe, and he never went back there. He never went back there to heal them. But through power of suggestion, he taught us all how to get rid of our pains and of course, put some seed money down so we can give God's money, and they started feeling that they're healed. But I knew what they did to that man. And I thought about that. Cause a disturbance, you have the power of authority of a policeman, watchman, shut them up. And then realize I've got to have a justification. And then take away her dignity. To me, that would fit. What did the woman want the daughters of Jerusalem to do? So now we got them out here. Here's what I'm dreaming. Here's the conflict that I have, and what I'm upset about. I'm not going to be fine, my lover, because they just beat me, took away all my dignity. So she says right here in verse 8. What does she say? I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem. See, she's of that grouping, but she stands out above them all. Solomon has his attraction for her. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem. What does he make point an oath to it? I adjure you. You're going to have to do this. You have to swear you're going to do it. What were they to do? Yeah, if you find my beloved, tell him. And your translation may read different, but tell him. I'll do the American stuff. I am sick from love. What do you call it? She's lovesick. More modern time. She's lovesick. You can beat me, and you can take away my dignity. I still love him. It didn't change a thing. That's how she has that much love for her beloved. And if you find my beloved, I want you to tell him that, because that's what my voice has been silenced. I can't do that right now. And I think that's why we have more conflict. It's keeping them separated. And there's things that just happen that she has no control over the watchman. So I think they fit in there in a nice way to show that what we take from that, there's conflict here. And so she asked the daughters of Jerusalem, you find him? And they don't find him either. They could have found Solomon. But no, Solomon's gone somewhere, and he very well could be. But there's things that keep coming up that says there is something more to this. And that's why we have another character injected here. And it's because almost by necessity to understand. And here's where I'm testing it all the way through. When does it definitely not able to do that? When are you definitely not able to do that? And what it does, it just intensifies as we go, as you will see. Our time is up. You'll have a new teacher to teach this next week, because I'll be going to a meeting, and not because you're no good and we're firing you. Lord want to be back, but for the Meyer, Nathan is going to be teaching this, and so he may give you some insight that I haven't, so that'll be good. Any questions before we close? And we'll start with what the daughters of Jerusalem are puzzled about. That'd be a good place to start next week. Any comments you'd like to make? I've talked a lot. Is there something you'd like to give as an overview that might be good to consider as we all try to come to this understanding? Solomon. Okay, thank you for participating and being here.